Good morning, everyone. My name is Christian Magpantay. I'm your reporter of the day, and we're gonna tackle about the economic situation in the Philippines due to COVID-19 pandemic. Let's start. The Enhanced Community Quarantine or ECQ has been extended anew until May 15 for Metro Manila, Central Luzon, Calabar Zone, and other provinces that continue to face high risk of COVID-19 infection. While regions, provinces, or areas which are considered moderate or low risk in spread of COVID-19 will under General Community Quarantine or GCQ until mid of May. If there is no deterioration, GCQ areas will be relaxed, leading to normalization. The lockdown in Luzon, which accounts for 70% of Philippine economy, began in mid-March and was originally scheduled to end on April 12 but was extended to April 30. For our economic impact, Philippine economy may lose between 276.3 billion and 2.5 trillion pesos depending on how the coronavirus pandemic develops in the next few months according to the government. A discussion paper by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies or PIDS entitled Projected Disease Transmission, Health System Requirements, and Macroeconomic Impact of Coronavirus Disease 2019 in the Philippines estimated the trajectory and magnitude of outbreak in the Philippines under various scenarios. The country's economic losses are estimated to reach 2.5 trillion under a worst-case scenario, where it is assumed that the pandemic is not contained around the world and that the global economy would fall into recession. Meanwhile, losses are projected to total 1.6 trillion under a moderate case, wherein these assume the pandemic is effectively contained around the world by the end of third quarter this year. For the best case scenario, where the pandemic is assumed to be contained globally by the end of the second quarter, economic losses amount to 276.3 billion. PIDS said the transport, storage, and communication sector is expected to suffer substantial losses between 11.7 billion and 124.3 billion due expected declines in tourism. This is equivalent to around 1.1% to 11.3% of sector's shares of gross value added to the economy. Other sectors' projected losses includes manufacturing 82.1 billion to 855.2 billion, wholesale and retail trade 93.2 billion to 724.8 billion, other services 41.5 billion to 356.9 billion, financial intermediation 18.5 billion to 141.3 billion, agriculture, forestry, and fishing for 9.4 billion to 110.3 billion, real estate, rental, and business activities 10.7 billion to 79.7 billion, electricity, gas, and water 5.7 billion to 44.3 billion, mining and quarrying 1.7 billion to 26.9 billion, and construction 1.7 billion to 19.3 billion. Metro Manila, which accounts for 37.5% of GDP, is a major concern during the pandemic, while the Inter-Luzon region accounts for about 73% of the country's GDP. Sectors from retail, real estate to manufacturing are experiencing serious challenges due to enhanced community quarantine. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index has dropped by 32% year to date. Over 2 million employees were displaced during the first 5 weeks of the Luzon-wide ECQ, wherein about 70% of these were affected by temporary business closures and 30% employees were subject to alternative work arrangements such as reduced working days and hours, forced leave, and work from home. Metro Manila accounted for the greatest number of displaced workers. The government's infrastructure program is facing further delays due to the quarantine's COVID-19 outbreak, as well as the repurposing of funds to contain the pandemic, while slower construction industry growth is seen this year as most activity is concentrated in areas affected by the enhanced community quarantine or ECQ. With strict ECQ measures imposed on Luzon, a large proportion of projects would have experienced stop work orders, leading on an unfavorable outlook for Philippine building sectors for 2020. Post-ECQ, construction activity will still face challenges such as supply chain, especially if sourced from foreign markets, and logistics and shortages due to business activities disruption. Our trade barriers. No import-export restrictions are implemented during the pandemic period. On the other hand, the importation of health equipment and supplies deemed critical or needed to address the COVID-19 public health emergency shall be exempt from duties, taxes, and fees pursuant to Republic Act No. 11469, otherwise known as Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. Import requirements, application and registration process for needed medical supplies, equipment, and projected equipment as COVID-19 critical commodities have been streamlined. Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Animal Industry issued guidelines in the acceptance of electronic export health certificate or international veterinary certificate to facilitate cargo clearance processing during the period of ECQ. Our economic outlook. Finance Department is readying the country's response to global recession brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Philippines will try to shield its domestic economy through the stimulus plan. On an annual basis, the gross domestic product is expected to shrink by 0.2% in 2020, but would likely bounce back to 7% growth next year as government policy gains traction. Inflation would also probably slow with this year. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP Government Benjamin Diokno forecast that inflation will average at the low end of the target range at 2% in 2020, down from previous forecast to 2.2%. The major downside risk is inflation are the declines in price of global crude and non-oil product and the impact of COVID-19 is both global domestic growth. Remittances, which comprise 10% of GDP, is also expected to contract by about 0.2 to 0.8 percentage point this year as Filipinos living and working abroad face massive layoffs due to the coronavirus leads global economic slowdown. This could also have a spillover effect on consumption. Consumption is a key segment of economy, accounting 70% is gross domestic product. Cash remittances, which fuel domestic consumption, grow by 4.1% to reach record $30,133 billion in 2019. Short-term opportunities. Philippine economy is basically sustained by domestic consumption. One of the first responses is geared toward the rebuilding of consumers' confidence and capability. NEDA also highlighted the necessity to support essential good production. March data is expected to have weighed heavily to domestic demand on manufacturing products. In the coming months, manufactured goods will likely increase production of food, beverages, chemical products, and health-related manufacture. That's all for today. Thank you for listening. Keep safe and God bless.